Hello, I'm Scott King, your host for this edition of Difference Makers, the show where we celebrate the teachers of the Atlanta Public Schools. As you probably guessed, I'm downtown Atlanta, where I'm about to embark on a tour which will take us to 4 amazing educators in our district. In their own words, they'll tell you how they make a difference. So sit back, relax, and thanks for joining us. If you could name 10 high schools in the Atlanta area, I'm sure that Benjamin E. Mays High School would be one of them. Our first stop at Mays' dynamic campus introduces us to an educator who believes that reading and writing are gateways to success in the classroom. She's also very passionate about education and teaching her students to their fullest potential. Let's go ahead and meet difference maker Lette Kennley.
Parallel to the articles, tell me which article was violated, what was the violation, and then how it violated.
Well, I think it was virtually from day one that I realized that I wanted to be a teacher. I always knew that I wanted to work with children, either as a teacher or a child psychologist. And I'd have to say some of my experiences in high school, some of the teachers who just really put a lot into making me the best that I could be, and also an experience in a club called the Future Georgia Educators, where I had the opportunity to work with students on an elementary, middle, and high school level. I was able to just kind of go in and look at the teachers and how they interacted with their students, and I think from there I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. So I went on to college and majored in English education, and as soon as I graduated, I secured a job in teaching, and I've been loving it since then.
So how did teachers teach all kinds of things? How did you land in language arts?
I just had a strong foundation, strong background in English. I've always loved to read, loved to write, and then again, those teachers in high school that really invested in me, they were my language arts teachers, and that's just how I developed a love and passion for English. Every day is different. I have a plan, that I have ready for the students, but I never know what they're going to bring to class. Sometimes they may be so into what we're doing that parts of the class or the lesson may last a little bit longer than others. But I typically want to, of course, teach the curriculum, but impart on them that hidden curriculum to have high expectations for their teachers and for themselves, to work to accomplish their goals, and find out a little bit about themselves, be able to pour in their creativity to what they do, and above all, learn. Maybe lit is not it's a hard sell sometimes. What do you do anything unique to get the students engaged and put them over the top and get inside of a story? Well, I try to make my class more than just reading books or writing essays. I allow them to bring their creative side. So if they are strong in music, I try to incorporate that. If it is poetry, if it is graphic arts, visual arts, whatever their talents are, I try to incorporate those things in the class. And then, of course, to make it relevant to them, just so that they know that this isn't just a course that they're taking, but they will actually take something away that they will be able to reflect on from years from now.
What you are going to do is, in your groups, I want you to read your articles, okay? Make sure that you have a good understanding of what is going on in your article. Make sure that you know that you're reading with the mindset that there is an injustice or several injustices that have been done to the particular group that you're reading about. What brings the passion in teaching? I know you have all these myths and stereotypes about teaching, but at the end of the day, a lot of teachers I converse with often have a drive and a passion that only they understand. Can you share yours?
I believe the drive and the passion just started early on from the foundation that my parents gave me, just a hard work ethic to be the best that I can be. And those are just some of the things that I desire to see out of my children. I call them children and students interchangeably because I treat them as such. I want to help them develop. That's one of the things that I enjoy seeing, that transformation from, that first day to the mature individual that they become at the end of the year and then, before they graduate.
Antigone, I know that was your favorite, right? Yes, no? All right, John?
But sometimes you just have challenges in the classroom that someone's sitting at home saying, oh, you're a teacher, that must be so nice. All you do is share the information and they take a test and say, no, it's a little more complicated than that. Share if you would.
It's definitely more complicated than that. I'd have to say that one of the things that I love about teaching is probably what causes me the greatest challenge, and that's that every day is different. Every individual who walks into my room is different, and I have to just be mindful of the things that they experience not only in school but outside of school, and those things that they bring with them, and just give them an avenue to be able to live through those things and to see that when they come into the school, when they come into my classroom, that there is some relevancy to their life as to what they're learning in the classroom, and that hopefully something that they get, be it, a pat on the back, a kind word, a smile, just to let them know that someone is on their side.
Sometimes it's hard to say, we're going to read the story from 1,000 years ago and you're just going to kind of like it. It's often thought that you draw parallels between today and then, and a student can say, hey, that's just like what I heard about last week, and he had the same challenges. Let me continue reading. Is that true that you can make those connections with students?
It is very true, and I've heard some of the other teachers try to impart upon the students that we have to know those things that have happened in the past, be it through literature or through current events, so that we know how to address those situations when they occur. A part of what I do couldn't be possible if I didn't work with a phenomenal staff of administrators and teachers. Here at Mays, we really work together. And the other teachers, the administrators, they help me be the best that I can be, and I help them be the best that they can be. And we just work together as a community. Although we are separated as small learning communities, we still delight in coming together to work together to serve our children and make sure that they can be the best that they can be. I just believe that you have to have a great rapport with the students. You have to become human. Sometimes they don't see you as a person. And I think once that barrier is broken and they know that they can come to you and ask you questions and that you do care about them, I think that everything else just falls into place.
Imagine a hands-on, technologically advanced learning environment where students actively embrace the learning process without fear of failure. That's exactly what our next difference maker advocates. She understands that each day she is making a difference in students' lives here at Warren T. Jackson Primary School. Let's go and meet difference maker Taylor Arnold.
Finger space 2. Finger space eat.
I come from a long line of attorneys. I have a family of attorneys, and so from the start I was going to go to law school, and I chose a college that I thought I'd want to go to undergrad there and then continue on to law school. And one day my freshman year, I called home and said, I'm not quite sure if law will be my passion. I don't really know what career I want to do. And my mom said, Taylor, you were always a good student. You worked hard. You struggled, and it took a lot for you. And I really think that maybe being a teacher, your students could really benefit from the struggles that you had and the path that you had to take. So I explored it. I took a few little pre-courses and really got into it. And here I am 10 years later. But if I look back on what school was like for me when I was little. I can remember my 3rd grade teacher coming in and her nails were just freshly painted red from a manicure. She, to this day, probably had no idea that I noticed that, but I watched her hands the entire day, the movements. And I went home and I painted my fingernails red, and I moved my hands as I spoke to my parents the way she did, and emulated her. And little, she doesn't, like I said, to this day, know that I did that. And it spoke to me as I look back on that they are watching my every move, and that drives me to want to be a good role model for them, to show them how to live a happy, educated life where they can achieve what they'd like. And so that it drives you and makes you want to work harder for them so that they can lead a happy life as well.
Wasn't it? And did she have to use any money?
What's the edge you have to be successful in the 1st grade?
1st grade is a year of firsts, if you will. It's their 1st year of not having 2 teachers and not having that immediate need met. So they go from being dependent learners to truly having to be independent. And working on their own and setting their own goals, because while I may be working with somebody, I may not be able to get to them immediately like they had in kindergarten. So they're learning to intrinsically work hard and do what they get that satisfaction that they're looking for.
I want you to stretch up and out and roll your shoulders. Roll your neck.
Well, what's your challenge in there? Everything's perfect, but I'm curious, what do you confront every now and then?
Oh, perfect. Far from perfect. We know how to wing it. No. With it being a teacher, the number one thing that I can say, because I've mentored some teachers, is organization. You must have a system with 23 little bodies coming to you every single day. There's got to be routine and expectation and everything flowing.
So he's making the grocery list. Do you think that Dad has some ideas of what they can prepare? Yes. Okay. And is it good to write a list before you do something?
Talk about what you were doing there in Centers, working with that one group, and the other kids were kind of on their own, managing their own affairs. So is that something they developed, or is that part of the 1st grade nomenclature?
This year I have found that my kids work more efficiently, and the end product that I get is better when I allow them one activity to work on from start to finish, instead of let's hurry, let's go to the next thing. They're more involved learners. They like to stay there. Whereas next year I may have more busy learners that want to move, and so I have to have centers that rotate. But this particular year, giving them one center to work on in a specified amount of time really produces the product that we're looking for. It also teaches them independence, not just immediately raising that hand to ask the question to depend on me, but going over there, having a task, and sticking to it, and problem solving. What do I think Miss Arnold will want, or what do I think is the best choice for completing this center? And so I often tell them, hey guys, for this, maybe I'm not grading for accuracy, I'm grading for how did you complete it, and can I tell that you did the best that you could and that you really tried thinking through it?
What's the biggest misperception? I ask everyone this, and I always get fun answers. What's the biggest misperception people get about teachers?
Teaching is 2 jobs. You teach children throughout the day, but then when the children get on the bus or in their parents' cars in the afternoon, the second job kicks in, and you return phone calls, you return emails, you plan instruction, you analyze the data, you grade paper. It's endless. And that's why I often say, teachers get stuck here till late at night. People don't realize that. And I've had friends go into teaching as a second career, as a second choice career. They've tried something else and now they're in teaching. And it's amazing to hear what they were saying prior to and what they're saying now. You don't understand it until you're in here. I'm actually enjoying the new Common Core. I think that it's putting more on the student in a good way to explain their thoughts, and not just to memorize a process or memorize an answer. It really is asking them to investigate and explain their reasoning behind their answers. Like I said, for the 10 years I've taught, a lot of times I've taught every year I teach 10s and 1s, place value. and they memorize. This is the tens value, this is the ones value, ones place value. And it's neat with the Common Core, they really have to understand what that means and understand what goes into a number. You yourself are making a difference in somebody's life, and it happens. It can happen in 5 minutes, it can happen over a school year. It's encouraging, and it makes you go home feeling like, hey, I'm worthy of something. I'm making a difference here.
For my homework, she's a Boston Terrier and is bigger than a pug and smaller than a Cocker Spaniel.
Our next stop takes us here on the east side of Atlanta. On my way over here, I gave it some thought that it was kind of rare to have a teacher who actually attended the school in which she teaches. Our next educator of 6 years did just that here at the Burgess-Peterson Academy right behind me. She believes that all children are capable of learning and achieving at high standards. So without any further hold up, let's go in and take a look at difference maker Princess Watts Blount.
All of hot gas. Anyone else? Kenneth?
The sun is a star.
The sun is a star. Great.
I wouldn't say that teaching was my first calling. I initially majored in biology. My lifelong dream was to become a pediatrician, and it was through a family friend that I believe she taught second grade. I spent a lot of time with her, and I would see her working late at night. I would assist her making bulletin boards, grading papers, and I just said to myself, wow, like she must really enjoy what she does. So I had the opportunity to spend some time with her and her students, and I just fell in love with it. So I changed my major to early childhood, had the opportunity to volunteer in several schools in the Dougherty County school system, and history ever since then. Fell in love with it. I strive to involve everyone in my classroom. Each and every one of my students are important, and they know that. I value their opinions. On the very first day of school, I try to build a community, although that takes a while, but just letting my students know that they're valued. There are no right or wrong answers. We learn from our mistakes, and just building that true foundation to where they feel like, hey, my opinion matters, or I have something to say, or help me out. And I just truly encourage that throughout the year, and I've found that to be very successful.
Why is the moon closest to the earth? Anyone else? Johnny.
Okay, this was probably our third or fourth lesson within this unit, the night sky, and the goal of the lesson was for the students to be able to learn how the moon and its rotation creates patterns that also affects the way that we view it as well as our seasons. So we've done a lot of previous work on the sun and the stars, and today's focus was on the moon and how the light reflected from the sun actually changes what we see as far as the moon. I look forward to seeing all of my students every day. I'm a mother myself, and before I walk into my classroom, I say to myself, I'm going to give it my best shot, and I want to be the type of teacher that I would want for my daughter. So I always keep that in the back of my head, and it's always a fresh start. No matter what type of day we have the previous day, it's a fresh start, and I look forward to all of the smiling faces. I know that the technology definitely enhances the lessons. I mean, like you said, we're living in a world full of technology with the cell phones and texting and the Promethean boards. It truly brings the lessons alive. I mean, I learn from my students daily. Just by having, it could be a video clip, it could be the students creating a PowerPoint, to listen to a small rap, all of that brings the lesson alive. And I feel like by hooking them in, engage them, once you have them, their attention, the sky's the limit.
Right here, which are hitting the moon. So what do you have to do next? I see you.
I'm a product of Atlanta Public School System, and I'm a former student when I was here, it was H.O. Burgess Elementary School. I'm not in the same classroom. The building was actually remodeled. When I found out that I had the opportunity to interview for a job over here, I was like,
I'm coming home.
Yes, exactly. A dream come true. Like actually being a student here and coming back and teaching, I mean, it's ideal. I lived in the community as a child. My grandmother lived not too far down the street, and You know, it's surreal. I do feel like we're one big family. Everyone, you know, if I have a problem downloading something, looking up something, I mean, it's nothing to, you know, go to my neighbor, go to someone, the media specialist, go to, you know, a teacher that's on another team. We rely on each other's strengths, and that's what keeps it, you know, a close-knit family, and we're all here for one purpose, and that's for the kids.
We conclude this episode of Difference Makers here in Atlanta's South Side at South Atlanta High School. If you've ever had the pleasure of visiting the School of Law and Social Justice, you would know that the community members take immense pride in their students. Well, our next educator is absolutely no different. But before I tell you who she is, I want to thank you for watching this episode of Difference Makers. So with no further ado, let's go in and visit educator Francesca Lane Warren.
Now, when we're talking about reading, I can't do anything with you unless you've read, right? We can't discuss the book, we can't talk about writing, because you've got to know Hamlet in order to write an essay on Hamlet. So I want you to take a second, and if you got a quiz back, I want you to look at that grade. Just look at it, and I want you to tell me, raise your hand, if the grade on your test indicates your intelligence.
In college, I never thought I was going to be a teacher. I thought I was going to be an attorney. So I went to college, I got a degree in English. My last year of college, I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to go to law school. And so a friend of mine was like, well, I think you would be a really good teacher. You might want to try it out. So here I am, 22. I enter Memphis City Schools, you know, a district that by all means was, you know, hard to work for. It was just difficult. And I wasn't from the area. And I was thrown into the classroom, and I survived. And really, after that first year, I didn't see myself doing anything else. Like, I got job offers to do other jobs, and I just loved the kids so much that I was like, I can't leave them. And every year was like, I can't leave them, I can't leave them, I can't leave them. Now it's year 10, I'm like, oh, I still can't leave them. So kind of got thrown into it.
So you eventually migrated to Atlanta in some way, and is APS your first stop?
Yes. So when I made the decision, probably in 2007, 2008, that I was going to move. And everybody's like, why are you leaving? I was like, you know, I want to try something different. So I heard about Atlanta Public Schools. They were doing a lot of great things. And I was like, I'm going to apply. And so I applied, and I luckily went to a job fair, and I met Peter McKnight, the principal. And he was like, well, I've already hired somebody, but, you know, you can still interview. So, well, he already had somebody in mind. So he interviewed me, and he was like, wow, we need you at my school. So I waited a couple of months to make sure I was going to get hired, because this was like February. And I got the word, and I moved. Me and my family moved down here. So
now, you studied law, but where did the passion kick in for you?
I think it kicked in. I didn't go to a high school that was traditionally where I teach at. So the passion came in just being with the kids and seeing how fun it is. You know, the kids always bring something new every day. So every day it's something new. Even what you have planned might not be what you do for the day, depending on the kids and what they come in with.
Teaching those courses, is it not a harder sell, but do you have a magic potion to say, hey, this is cool stuff too, or it's important that you're well-rounded?
I think it's important that I'm well-rounded, but I try to pick pieces that the kids can engage in, that we can have discussions about. So even though it's 9th grade literature, and oh my gosh, I hate it literature, when we read something like Night, and we're talking about millions of people being killed just based on their ethnicity, kids get into that, and it reminds them of things in their neighborhood. And so we're looking at that, and we're discussing it, and before you know it, the kids are reading it, even when they don't want to read. They're like, oh, I have to read more. Or even writing, you know, I always tell them that writing is like a gateway to the future. If you're a good writer, you can almost do anything you want. So me working with the kids and showing them, you know, we're writing about stories that they've read in class, they get connected to it. And so they might not like the subject per se, but they like what we're doing, and they don't realize that they're actually learning.
Because what I'm hearing, this is what people are telling me. This lane is so hard. I don't get what they're saying. So what we're going to do today is, you're in groups, right? 2 pairs join a group. So there's a group of 4. There's one group of 2. You guys are going to become detectives on Act 1, Romeo. I keep saying Romeo and Juliet because of my 9th graders, but for Hamlet. So I want you to look at what I just gave you. Everybody look at it. Take a second and look at it.
You know, I'm in this school where it's broken up in the CAD and the health medical, and you talked about your law background, and boom, where are you? Law, social justice.
Right.
So you kind of, They always say, oh, well, it always kind of works itself out, and you're teaching and you're in law. So you bring that law background into your literature?
We try to look at things from a social justice standpoint. So when we're reading books like, I'll go back tonight, when we're reading books and we're talking about, what was the legal, was this legal what they did? So, we try to talk about infused law, but I also try to make it general enough because we have kids in this academy who don't want to be attorneys. They want to be doctors and they want to be scientists. So just trying to tie it in for everybody so they can kind of see. So I try to bring a little bit of it in, but for the most part, I just try to make sure that I'm giving them an engaging class on whatever topic or unit that we're doing.
We talk about technology in the classroom, but I'm on this literature thing. I was like, okay, where the books, the hardcore discussions, why do you need a laptop or Promethean board? That's my challenge. It was like, tell me how technology has infiltrated or even got into your discipline.
Well, you know what? I think we have to recognize the technology piece because we're at a day and age where kids don't carry books. They carry cell phones. And they carry iPads. So one of the things that I started doing was having the kids, they read their books on iPads now. So we have a classroom set. They read them on the iPads. And it makes them want to read the book. It's still the same Hamlet that I have the copy of, but they want the iPad and they want to read it on the iPad. Also, just the kids going online and creating projects online using like Globster or things like that. We have to get with the technology piece because the kids are so technology driven. So that's what they like to do, and that's a hook. When we're going online and I say, okay, well, you guys can use this online resource, they are excited to show that.
I don't ask everyone this, but here, how do you feel you make that difference in just day-to-day life?
Teachers have so much on them, but I try to tell teachers to make sure that they are perfecting their craft. So a lot of times you might get bogged down about policies, about what's happening in the news, about job cuts, but the most important thing is that you're there in the classroom for the kids. So whenever I get to that point where I feel overwhelmed, I remember it's about the kids. And I also remember that as a professional that I need to make sure that I do things for myself professionally. So that might mean that I go to a conference or I go to some specialized training, something that's going to make me a stronger professional. And I think that helps people see the bigger picture because a lot of times people think that teachers just teach.
What's the gratifying part?
It's when a child comes back to you and says, I learned what I needed for college, for life in your class. When you have kids that come and they say, I made it through my freshman year, thank you. That right there is worth all of it. So just knowing that kids are benefiting from what I'm doing in the classroom really makes everything else, small.
You come to work and you have your successes. How do you do it?
I think the first and foremost is that I like and I respect the kids. I think that's the first thing. Because if you don't, you can't make it through the day. Because the kids sometimes do things that make you shake your head, make you think, is this the field for me? So the first thing is that I like and I respect all of the kids. But also is that I view myself as a professional and I view this as a game. So when I go into the classroom, it's game on. So whatever I do, I try to make sure that I bring it. If we're talking about writing synthesis essays, well then when you come in class, we're going to have the best lesson on how to write synthesis essays.
Any closing thoughts?
Thank you for having me, and I just want people to understand that teachers are people and that, we are in it for the kids. We love the kids. So,
go Hornets.
Go Hornets, that's right.